Yanetrita Shetasen Nukheka Nubraku Nupara Nukheka Nukheka Discover Natarian philosophy through music, through video lectures, and through books by Sabai Dr. Muata Ashby. Peace be with you.
Modern philosophy. I'm sure many of you have seen this picture. It is from one of the Papaya called Pertem Heru, which you may know as the Book of the Dead, or the Book of Coming Forth by Day. This is a picture, shows you some of the hieroglyphic text for the teaching that we have been discussing. This is Asar Sekar. Asar in his form as king of the netherworld, where everyone goes after death. After death, there is a judgment that is carried out. The balance scales. On one end we have the feather mouth, on one end we have the heart. The heart is a vessel, is a container. It contains your thoughts, your feelings, your desires. If the heart is heavy with worry, with anxiety, with unrighteousness, with lies, deceit, and desire, then it's going to weigh down the balance scales. Ma'at goes up. And that means that this is an unrighteous soul. And there are three things that can happen as a result of the balance. One is that you can have, the balance scales can be even with Ma'at. The balance scales can be uneven. The heart can be heavier or the heart can be lighter. If the heart is heavier, it means that you have been an unrighteous person and you will suffer in another world. When you have desires and when you have unrighteousness in your heart, you have nightmares. Nightmares are the source of your own suffering that you have brought upon yourself. If you are righteous and peaceful, you cannot have nightmares. You will not have mental disease either. You will not have insanity either. If the balance scales are even, it means that you are a good soul, but you're not a perfected soul. And so the decree is that you are going to be a servant of Asar. You're going to be able to behold Asar in his city. If the heart goes up, means that you're lighter than the feather of Ma'at, then that means that you go to actually sit in the throne. That means that if I go and sit on your lap, what happens? One or two things will happen. Either you'll start feeling pain, or I'll break your legs, or another thing that can happen, if I'm so subtle and light, then I may dissolve into you. You follow where this is going? You become one with. And that teaching comes to us from the myth of Asar. And these are the books that deal with Ma'at philosophy. The three main books. And of course, the book, we'll leave the text for now. The book of Coming Forth by Day, the Pertem Heru, is actually, should be also on this list, is actually a higher metaphysical advancement of Ma'at philosophy. Ma'at philosophy has a practical as well as a cosmic aspect. Discuss this on Friday. I have done God's will. I have given bread to the hungry, water to the thirsty, clothes to the clothless, a boat to the boatless, to the shipwreck. I made the prescribed offerings to the gods and goddesses, and I also made offerings in the temple to the glorious spirits. Therefore, the glorious spirits refers to Aku. So you made homage to those elevated souls also, enlightened beings. Therefore, protect me when I go to face the God. And this is facing the God here in the judgment. if you were to do these things, these are basic injunctions about humanism, mod in practice in society. We're not supposed to have a society that's I got mine, you get yours. Society that I get all the riches and you get all the pain. One part of society suffers while the other part of society prospers. That's not my philosophy. Everyone should have their basic needs taken care of, and if you have the capacity, you should help giving food to the hungry, water to the thirsty, clothes to the clothless, shelter to the shelterless. There will be no peace in society unless that is done. And everyone has an innate right to these. Why? Because everyone is divine. If I have that understanding, I will not rest until everyone in the world has all the necessities taken care of. How can I exist in a country that's rich and has all the food when there are people in the world who don't have the food and who are actually being stolen from them? The injunction of Muhammad that says, I have not snatched away food from the mouth of a child. And in many countries who are like children compared to this country, and they're being stolen from them all the time. The natural resources of Africa are being taken and destroyed. If Africa was strong and could control its own borders, there would be no nuclear power in the world. You realize that? Nuclear material, or fissionable materials, plutonium, is mined in Africa. Important components that go to create fighter jets, important materials and minerals that are used for mining for this purpose, they come from Africa. If you control your resources, you say, no, I don't want that going out. But if you are a degraded culture, you can't control your resources, what's going to happen? And of course, now we're at the point where if people try to do that, they would get bombed, they would get some kind of excuse. Oh, you got weapons of mass destruction there. Nobody can find, but we know it's there. Right? And we can create elaborate little stories to show that it's there, and then of course it's not. But after the fact, who's going to worry about that? Because we're all supporting this culture, right? And we can't do anything about it, can we? Can we?
Yes.
All right, thank you for correcting me. Good. I like that. The Pernod Haru. O Lord Asar, Ul-Nefer, soul of creation and foremost in Ament, the netherworld, I am Haru, your son, and I announce that I bring a righteous soul should be to see you, O divine Lord. This is the papyrus of Ani. Ani is another initiate. I want to show you this particular slide to give you an indication of what will be happening in the inner shrine. Not to discuss specifics about what it is, but to give you an indication. Here, Ani, this is Heru. O Lord Ul-Nefer, we're referring to Asar. I am Heru. This is Heru. Heru is the one who leads the initiate by the hand into the inner shrine to meet Asar. He has gone through the balance scales already, and he has been judged to be righteous. So therefore, Heru announces. This part would be played by a priest who would put on a headdress that looks like the Heru character. And there would be three personalities in the shrine. One would be a priest, and there would be two priestesses representing the Divine Trinity. The initiate is led in. And here, can anybody tell me what the difference is between the way the depiction is here and the depiction here? Excuse me? One is kneeling, anything else? The hair. One hair is black, one hair is white.
There's a slight headdress too.
This is the movement into the shrine. And this is when Heru leads the initiate into the shrine. What happens means is that the righteous initiate is being anointed. Do you know any other philosophies or teachings that talk about a great anointing? Christianity. In fact, the term Christos comes from a Greek term which means anointed one, anointing. And here Annie is becoming an aku. He's becoming enlightened. And this is the result of my practice. How to become a qualified aspirant, therefore. Following the path of my philosophy then is how the path is done. My philosophy teaches that if you adopt the path of life that leads to truth, you will discover peace and prosperity. Teaches also that you are divine, you have divine purpose. If you study the wisdom of the Neteru, you will discover your purpose in life. If you become pure heart, righteous, you will discover God and immortality. Ma'at also teaches that you will succeed in life if you learn about Ma'at philosophy from your teacher and practice it every day. As you said before, this is a perennial practice. You don't practice Ma'at today and then you become unrighteous tomorrow and then you say, oh well, I'll go to my spiritual preceptor and he'll forgive me and absolve me. It doesn't work that way. There are metaphysical reasons why it does not work that way. When you commit an action, the residue of that action stays in your unconscious, and that creates future impetus. If you create good deeds or evil deeds, those residues, memories, shall we say, memory engrams, we can call them, for lack of better terminology for right now, it remains in your unconscious. Even after death, this remains and gives you an impetus for a future reincarnation. Also, unrighteous actions, they cause agitation in your mind. And with that agitation, you cannot fathom the depth, the subtlety of the spiritual teaching. This is why you need to have purity of heart. This is Goddess Ma. And these hieroglyphic text here means Ra, Nu, Per, Tem, Heru. The words of coming into light. The book of enlightenment. We've been to some of these powers before, Salagola and skip those for now. The great truth, number 3, devotion and freedom. We discussed a little bit about this. Uwashu is the important concept here. You see where we have been. We're talking about wisdom. God is one, and the supreme, all-encompassing divinity. We've talked about how we fell from that knowledge through Anmat, which is unrighteousness, that led us to Kemen, which is ignorance. Then we come back to devotion, is a path to lead us out of ignorance and out of unrighteousness. Devotion to the teaching, Prek, and devotion to the divine. And that teaching must be studied. I always like to joke. You wouldn't like to go and be treated by a doctor who has learned from reading books how to be a doctor. He's studying how to cut out an appendix. You've never done one before, but your appendix is about to burst, so he said, let me cut you open. Would you prefer that doctor or someone who's done 100 appendix operations? Why would you think that you can learn spiritual philosophy without having a preceptor? It cannot work. Spiritual philosophy is actually, when in the higher levels, is actually more subtle and more difficult than rocket science, than engineering, than medical science. But I'm here to tell you that you have the capacity to do that. You do have it. Everyone has. Because everyone is created with the spark of the divine. The two aspects of popular devotional practice. This book the path of divine love, deals with the uashu discipline, the discipline of devotion. This is an actual picture of how the temple was set that you saw earlier, how it looked, the inner hall that I just showed you, or not the inner hall, this is the peristyle hall, the open hall. When they first uncovered it, it was covered with sand after the Christians had abandoned it in ancient times, which is after they kicked out the original Kemetic priests and priestesses. But that's another part of the story. Go to the African origins for that part. This is how it looked. Full color, full glory. Then the British went in there and created the Aswan Dam. The first Aswan Dam. The first Aswan Dam created a lake, which is now called Lake Nasser. The Temple of Aset is behind the dam. When the Nile floods, when the waters come from Uganda, up the Nile, into the Mediterranean, it created a lake. And it raised up to almost completely submerging the temple. And all of the color, or most of the color, shall we say, was lost. Destroyed. This picture is a depiction of how the early Egyptologists found the temple. It is a picture, you can see it in the front of the book Mysteries of Isis also. This is how they found it. You can imagine the glory of being able to walk there. It's fantastic even today, even in the ruined state. It's my favorite temple, actually. Two aspects of devotional practice. One is personal practice and one is community practice. What goes on in the temple by initiates can be called a higher form of worship. We're not talking about that here. We're talking about the general classification of worship. In your home, you have a special room where devotion is practiced. This is how it was done in ancient times. During the festival time, you gather together in front of the temple, and you're led by the clergy on the ritual. Here, in these temple inscriptions, is where you see the Rekit symbol. You can see those here, and this picture is an actual picture of one of these columns. Great truth number 4, Shedi and Makeru. Shedi is the study of the spiritual teaching. Shedi means to penetrate the mysteries, to uncover the mysteries, the disciplines that accomplish that purpose. And the first aspect of Shedi is wisdom teaching. And the goddess of wisdom is goddess goddess Aset. And here, this picture is a line drawing of what you see here. The goddess giving her breast to the child, Heru, to nourish Heru. And you see her face is cut out, it's damaged. This is damage perpetrated by Christians and Muslims. This is documented evidence, and this kind of damage here also. Trying to gouge out the faces so as to detract from the power of the images. This kind of damage, as well as entire temples, were dismantled, and the stones were used to build mosques and other houses and so on and so forth. Here we have the term shed, to dig, or to excavate. This is the source for the term shedi. Here we have shet with a T, it means to suckle, and shedi, to study profoundly, to penetrate the mysteries. So this image that we see here, when we see the goddess, the mother and child, really we are to understand that Aset is giving Heru the spiritual nectar. The nectar of the spiritual teaching that enriches the mind and the soul, not just milk. And this is what a spiritual preceptor does. This is why Seba is the male terminology and Sebat is the female. There's a giving, and there's a kind of a sexual process that goes on. Whether you're male or female. If I was a female teacher, I'm still called Seba, but Seba the same way. And still, because what I'm doing is I'm speaking, and the mouth is the penis that goes into the ear to fertilize the soil of the mind, to give birth to spiritual enlightenment. You see? Then we can end the whole lecture right there. That was glorious, wasn't it? How does this all come together? The great truths of Unitarianism are realized by means of 4 disciplines in 3 steps. Let's try to categorize it so it won't look so complicated. Listening, reflection, and meditation. These are the 3 basic steps of the wisdom teaching process. You listen to the teaching, you practice a ritual related to it, meditation. Myth, ritual, and metaphysics. The 3 steps of religion. Listening, sejan, and shedi. Listening, sejan is the term that means to heed. When you heed something, you're supposed to listen to it and then act in accordance with it. You don't just listen to it and then forget about it. Like in this culture, take the 10 Commandments, and yeah, I know about 10 Commandments, and I go do whatever I want. Once you have a teaching, you listen to the teaching, then it's time for aru. Aru means ritual. It means the things that are to be done. And then it's time for ua, or meditation, what we're going to practice at the end of this program today.
What said aru means again?
Aru means ritual. And there are 3 kinds of rituals that we practice: a daily ritual, a monthly ritual, and an annual ritual. That's what we're going to talk about.
And what was ua?
Ua, uashu, means, or ua. Ua means meditation. U-A-A-H. Correlating, I guess one thing popped up there that was supposed to be 4 at the time, but anyway, we'll go with this. I want you to understand that the practice of religion and the practice of the Shedi yogic disciplines, they lead to the same spiritual realization. You go through the path of religion, you practice myth, ritual, mysticism, devotion, action, meditation. Going through the 3 steps we discussed: aspiration, striving, and establish. The engine that drives this is the Shedi disciplines, which are here: meditation, devotion, wisdom, and action. Tantrism is another form of Shedi discipline also. So getting at is that whether you look at this as a philosophical path or as a spiritual path, as a religious path, you're leading yourself to the same. Because in your religion, you must practice meditation, devotion, and the right action. And in your yogic path, your Shedi path, you must practice the same. Because in a religion, you're using spiritual symbols. Basic daily observances of the Shinsu. Daily observances. If you want to consider yourself as a Shinsu, as a follower of this tradition, this is the basic requirement of what you must do. You must be able to practice this daily ritual 3 times daily. You know that the Muslims practice 5 times a day, so 3 times should not be a problem for you. 3 times a day. You don't have to take a bath, just 1 time a day. Lighting a candle, lighting incense, you have your altar set up, as we discussed in your room, your personal room. Or it can be done in the community, like the group that meets here once a week, that kind of program. Reciting the 4 great truths, chanting the daily heka, which is in the daily worship book. Studying of scripture, that may be a reading or listening to a taped lecture, or attending a lecture actually also qualifies as your daily study program. And then brief meditation, and an offering must be made. An offering to the divine that you have chosen for your worship. 3 times daily comes from the understanding of the Anunian Trinity. There are 3 aspects of Ra. Ra has Kepri. Remember Kepri? We talked about the Creator. And then he is the morning sun. Then there is a noonday sun. And then there is an evening sun. So Kepri, Ra, and Tem. There are 3-fold worship. Morning, noon, and dusk. Really following the emergence of the sun at dawn in the morning, and then at noontime when the sun is at its highest zenith, and in the evening at dusk when the sun is setting. The items that we use are the scroll of the great truths. We don't have any available here. We don't have time to make any, but we make them on parchment and on papyrus paper. Those of you who attended the program 2 years ago, you hope you still have your scrolls. And those of you who would like to have one, you can let us know at the end. And I think it's just like $2 or $1 for the parchment one. The papyrus one is a little more trouble to make, so it's $10. An Ankh amulet or approved divine image in your altar, a candle, incense, and a prayer mat or blanket. And we use the Imam blankets. We don't have any here for sale because we didn't have time to bring them. We're kind of running out. We have these available also. The divine image. This is decided by which worship or which tradition is most interesting to you. That's how that is decided. Whether your divinity of worship will be Asen, whether it will be Heru, or some other divinity. Whether it will be a universal divinity. All that is decided in that way. And that's how the daily worship is organized. And this is the basic level of practice for you to consider yourself a Shemsu. And what this means, therefore, in your relationship to us as a temple, is that you need to be connected to the lecture system. The system of the teaching being disseminated, and the explanation of how to practice it. On a larger level, you need to be connected to the rituals that lead to the higher realization of the spiritual goal, which is to attain that oneness that we talked about. And that is done by becoming a member of the temple, a member of the organization. And there are many different levels of membership. I think like for $10 a month, you get an all-you-take lecture, you get the newsletter, and a couple of benefits like that. But you can check on that later. I think the newsletter, the back of it says information about that. On a monthly basis, there's also practice. There's also an aru. But we're not going to discuss that in detail right now. Really, the daily one is what we're really...
These are also in the newsletter.
This is also the newsletter, basically described also.
And the Great Truths also.
The what?
The Great Truths also.
And the Great Truths are listed there also, for you to see those as well.
And you get a scroll if you become a member.
And you get a scroll also, automatically with membership, right? And also there's an annual worship. These are the 2 basic annual rituals, the summer solstice and the winter solstice. Winter solstice is the birth of Heru, December 25th. These are the Sheti disciplines, the 4 main Sheti disciplines. And for each Sheti discipline, we have written a book to explain the details related to it. I'm not going to go into details now, because there's an overview of the spiritual philosophy itself. But suffice to say that there are 4 disciplines. Discipline of wisdom, and we have mysteries of Isis for that. The discipline of Ma'at philosophy, which is the wisdom of Ma'ati. The discipline of devotion to the divine, the path of divine love. And the discipline of meditation. Actually, there are about different books on meditation. This is the main one. Meditation, Ancient Egyptian Path to Enlightenment is the main one. But we also have the Glorious Light meditation system, the Serpent Power meditation system. So there are many different choices, and it depends on which system works better for your personality. In order for this to work, there must be purity also, purity of the body. And this book was written for that particular purpose, to promote your understanding of how to adopt. Our own scriptures tell us, the Purna tells us, in order for this to become effective, you must be a vegetarian. You cannot be drinking alcohol. You must be a righteous personality, for the reasons that I already gave you. You must purify your heart so you can have subtlety of intellect. If you have disease and worries and anxieties and cancers, you're coughing all the time, how would it be you're trying to sit for meditation and you're trying to close your eyes and breathe in and breathe out? Oh, let me try again. It won't work. It won't work. It'll be impossible. Or if you have cancer and you're wondering you have 3 months to live, it won't work. Or if you have a stroke and you're laid out in a coma, it won't work. There's no spiritual evolution at that point. You must strive for health. Health is of 3 types. Health of the body, health of the mind, and health of the soul. Another book that is created to assist this process is the Movement of the Gods and Goddesses. This is a posture system similar to the Indian posture yoga system, although there are many differences and ours is more spiritually based, perhaps you should consider. Directly based on the postures that were discovered on the temple of Heru and other temples, as well as papyruses. These postures were practiced by the priests and priestesses. And you can see that book there, we have it. How to get started? Initiation into Egyptian yoga. It gives you an overview of the initiatic process, how to begin the process of practicing the spiritual disciplines. The Sima philosophy. We just went over these very basically. The wisdom, devotion, meditation is just a slide to augment that, so we'll pass on it for now. The health culture. This is just, I told you, body, mind, and soul. When we talk about health, it's not just to give you a pill to heal your body. The source of disease is from a higher source, from your astral plane. Your astral plane has a disease that's created in your causal plane, and this is your unconscious mind, and that needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, your disease will not be truly cured. Here we see the picture of the practice of massage therapy and reflexology. Twain are the forms of food for the soul and for the body, of which the animals consist. Some are nourished with a twofold form, while others with a single. Their soul is nourished by the ever-restless motion of the cosmos. Their bodies have their growth from foods drawn up from the water and the earth of the inferior world. And so therefore this is the Kemetic diet system. These are 2 of the main supplements that we also sell that go along with the Kemetic diet system. And anybody who is interested, I recommend that you begin here getting the Kemetic diet book and the initiation into Egyptian yoga book so you can start to get into the entire process of the culture of Shetaut and Tur. These supplements are necessary because the food that we have available in the supermarkets is devoid of the quality of nutrients that are necessary. The kamut is actually an ancient Egyptian grain that was rediscovered 50 years ago as seed form, and has not been denatured or genetically engineered like most other foods that are out there. Summary of the Sudu philosophy. Pseudo philosophy is, I told you, food for the soul, the body, and the mind. And this is Imhotep, who is regarded as the creator of the pseudo philosophy of Kemet. He's one of the first doctors. And I said last night, this is Imhotep, the vizier. He was an architect, a lawyer, a doctor, and a philosopher. He wrote writings that have not been discovered yet, but are referred to by other sages. And he is not a mummy, as the movie would portray. Hollywood is putting out nothing but falsehoods and misconceptions about Kemetic philosophy and culture. And this needs to be rejected out of hand. How to attain the higher vision is the practice of meditation. And there are 6 major forms of meditation that were practiced in ancient Kemet. Meditation on the subtle life force is the one that we're going to study today, that you're going to be introduced to today. And you know that as a serpent power. Another word that the Indians use is Kundalini. We have meditation on righteous action, that's the Mahatyan path. And then you have the Pranamaru path, which is the I Am formula. Then we have the Nukraaku, which is the glorious light system. We have the Rek Amun Uwa, which is the wisdom teaching. That's the teaching of the Temple of Set. And then we have the Ket Ankh Uwa, which is the Tree of Life system. I talked about it a little bit in the Reading Theology, but the book on this system has not been produced yet. The lecture series on that, but the book has not been produced yet. This is a picture of sage Amunhotep, son of Apu, at 80 years old. And this is the Amunhotep posture for meditation. Amunhotep was regarded as one of the greatest sages. He was so great that they even had a temple dedicated to him. And he was a high priest as well. He wrote spiritual philosophy and the practice of meditation, obviously, as you see in this posture. Arasheka meditation system. Before we go forward with this, why don't we go ahead and take our break, and then we will get into the instruction for the first level of meditation practice of the Arasheka system. Okay? Any brief questions then now? This basically concludes the lecture on the introduction to Shetaut and Tur. And this will be the final concluding section on the meditation system that we're going to next. One question? Two questions? One leads to another?
Earlier in the lecture, on the screen here, you had God cannot be understood. Right? Yeah. And the Christian upbringing, or in the Bible, you find like stuff like, I believe. People normally say, I believe in God. And in that particular understanding, if you think it out, if you believe in something, you're leaving room for doubt. Yeah, if you're thinking about something, or if you believe in something, for example, if you see something that's hot, you say, I believe it's hot, but if you touch it, well, you know it's hot. So you've actually gone past belief. The next time you see that particular object, you will know that it's hot. So if someone says they believe in God, that means they don't have a total understanding or knowledge of God. And looking at what we had on the board when it says God cannot be understood, how should one then define oneself and be coming into awareness of God? Should it be, I believe in God? Should it be, I have an understanding of God? Should it be, I have a knowledge of God?
The particular slide that you talk about, I deliberately ran over that because I could explain it to you, and I shall explain it to you, but this takes time for you to reflect upon. I'll try to make it very simple. The same teaching is found in the Temple of Set, where a set says that no mortal man has unveiled me. No mortal man can know me. What this means is that the transcendental supreme being cannot be known with the physical eyes, with the physical ears, with the physical senses. You must develop a higher mode of sensibility in order to discern the supreme being. And that's why the worship of the lower beings is used to lead you to a higher understanding. What they're talking about is, I believe in God, that means faith. I believe that there's something, I don't know what it is, but I've been assured by certain people that it's there, and so on and so forth. When you say, I know God, then that is a more complete experience of God. If you say, I am God, then that's the highest experience. That means that you don't know God, but that you have an experience of oneness, and that there is nothing to know, in fact. The same teaching says that God, you did pick up on this, or maybe you did, that God can be seen, right? Do you catch that? Do you all catch that? In the same slide that he was talking about? God can be seen in the form, but God cannot be understood. Does anybody have an idea what that means?
You can be seen?
God can be seen, but not understood. Did you catch that?
Does that
I
mean?
think so.
Did you catch the slide where that came on?
I didn't see that part, but
I
I
read
saw
it.
the part he's talking about.
Okay, I read it. Did anybody else catch that? You see that?
Does that mean that everything we see actually is God, but to truly fathom God, we have to become one with it?
Yes, that's what it means. If you were to practice meditation, say, on this chair, if you block out all other thoughts and you meditate for a certain period of time, your mind will meld with that object and you will know that object. The reason is because all is what?
One.
And you are also. But if you maintain yourself in ignorance, you will maintain a separation. The separation is, according to the Harpa song, an illusion. You see how it's all coming together? But for you to realize this and have the actual experience of it, that is the practice of the teaching and the disciplines. I mean, what I said, if you were to have this realization, you would not be seeing individual people. It'd be like in the Matrix movie when he becomes awakened to the Matrix, right? He sees things as X's and zeros and ones. He sees it as a computer reality. Sages see a kind of oneness, but that is a subtle manifestation that is in creation itself. So sages have dual consciousness in a sense. They can see you as an individual, and they can also see divinity also as well. But God cannot be understood until you have the higher subtle consciousness. Your eyes will always see the physical reality, but you have to develop a higher sense in order to discern the divinity. Which means that you are not mortal anymore. In order for you to truly understand something, you have to become one with it. And the problem with human existence is that we are constantly, innately seeking that oneness and not finding it in the things that we're trying to unite with. If you're having sex with someone, you're trying to unite with them and know them. That's why sex in the Haggadah text is called, the basis of it is the word rek. Rek is to know. I mean, remember like in Washu, Rek, and Ab, devotion is knowledge of one's own heart. Remember that the last great truth? You recall that? Mm-hmm. Rek means knowledge. Rekit is the knowledge goddess, which is a set. And you're trying to know things by uniting with them. And uniting with objects of the world, as you saw in the first slide, cannot lead you to that kind of peace and completeness. You can try to unite and have sex with 100 people. You're not going to find oneness. And buying objects is also a form of sexual interaction that you're trying to have. You go to the mall and you're a compulsive buyer of clothes. You're trying to unite yourself with those objects. You're trying to own them and bring them to you. That's not going to lead you to happiness because it's incomplete. Those objects can never complete your consciousness. The only way to be complete is to realize that you already have the fullness. And your illusion of not having that is what is causing your problems. So the problem is within you.
Mine's more like a statement. I'm not sure if you saw Matrix Reloaded, but every time when they had...
Oh, okay, I don't want to get into more of that Matrix madness. I just use that as a metaphor, but it's not a perfect metaphor. That movie is not...
Well, they were showing how he had dual consciousness himself. He would see the world, and he would see things through the...
Yeah, but I don't want to give you the idea that that's a spiritual movie, or that that's something that is an expression of the teaching, or that they are evolved personalities for producing that, because they're not. I think the second movie proves that. So let's leave that behind.
Is there a calendar, Egyptian calendar, or Libyan calendar that they follow? They make one
Yes, there is a calendar, and we produce one actually.
that you could pull out of this mirror, or whole calendar?
No, we have our own calendar. And actually, it's actually something that we produced that was a combination. It shows you the Western months and the Canadian equivalent. We have not produced one for this year, though, because there was not enough demand for it. If there was enough demand, we produced another one. But the newsletter actually has a section that tells you what month it is, the divinities of the month, tells you what rituals are to practice this month, and all those kind of things. So look in the newsletter.
How do you explain to people when you say ancestral worship, because they always say gods, they always think it's like idol worshiping, or...
Well, they're going to think that no matter what you say. And waste your time trying to explain that. Unless they're truly interested, then you have to go into the whole detail of what is going on and what we've done here. Say to them ancestral worship is a degradation of the practice. And yes, some African nations do practice ancestral worship in that degraded way. But that is not the higher practice. Remember we saw the teaching where the Puerto text talks about worshiping the gods, the divinities, as well as the enlightened ones, as well as the sages. But worshiping them as enlightened beings, not as personalities. Like I don't want you worshiping me as some kind of a whatever. That's not part of our culture.
This place right here, about the Egyptian names.
Potomac.
They didn't Egyptian, the Community people did not go down and bow for that and praise it.
Oh yes, sure.
They did that.
Sure. But this is as a symbol of a cosmic reality. That they're not worshiping this. They're not worshiping the stone in the sense of a Western idolatry. Okay? In a higher sense, the stone is infused with divinity, and that aspect is understood. But we're really worshiping a higher principle. See, the concept of idolatry is a misconceived notion. If I say to you, with this concept I already told you that this is a representation of a higher divinity, and I'm worshiping it as that. And you tell me that I'm practicing idolatry, then what are you practicing? Because you're telling me that God has only one image, and this is the only image that can be worshipped. And doing so, you're saying that God is circumscribed. I'm saying that God has many forms and they cannot be circumscribed. Basically what I'm saying is that the universe is divinity. There can be no idolatry. And you're saying, yes, Jesus is the form. or the mosque is the form. That's idolatry. I'm giving you a symbol, I'm telling you what the only thing that can be worshipped, this is it. That's idolatry. That's a misconceived notion. Mm-hmm.
If that symbol is not...
Oh, wait a second, one thing. The worship of the Akus, or light beings, is you're worshiping them as gods and goddesses because they have become gods and goddesses. That's how you should understand it. Ancestral worship in a degraded state, yes, you're worshiping your grandfather, you're worshiping your great-grandfather who came before you as a spirit who's somehow up there helping you and affecting your life. In the higher understanding, these are enlightened beings, Akus, who have transcended the mortal coil, who have become enlightened beings, gods and goddesses.
Well, what I was thinking is, what was the necessity of them going in front of this if they were just worshiping the principle? Why couldn't they just do it in, their, sacred places they set up in their homes or,
Okay, for example, why don't you, how come you're not sitting in the air like this? Why are you sitting on the chair?
support.
For support. For support. Exactly. Support until you're able to reach an abstract level of worship. See, but don't make the mistake, or those of you who are thinking that, don't make the mistake. Oh, I can see all this philosophy, I see all this, and I've transcended it, I don't need any of these symbols, I don't need this stuff, I can just go directly to... That's a very big misconception that many people make. You need, as a crutches, before you can walk. You need training wheels before you can go. Symbols are recognized in our tradition and in high cultural philosophy as crutches for the beginning stages of religion. This is for the popular practice. In fact, initiates do not use these kinds of symbols. They do not do this kind of worship. They do not offer incenses. They do not do these kinds of things, but this is for higher practice. So don't go taking that and thinking that you can go skip from A to C without going through B. That's a very big misconception. When you do that, I can guarantee you it's not going to work because you have not purified yourself. There's a certain purity that's beginning through the worship and understanding the principles of the iconography. And that's one of the things we're going to get into in the new book coming out, The Gods and Goddesses. Okay? I'll give you a... I wasn't getting in your case particularly, I'm just saying that as a... for the understanding. It's a crutch, and it's understood to be a crutch. But it's an important crutch, because think about it. If you didn't have symbols in life, how would you be able to understand anything? You have to have a symbolic form to understand abstract concepts. But you won't be able to understand anything without symbols. The symbol of no smoking. If you're a smoker, how do you understand you're not supposed to smoke if you don't see a symbol or a sign? Let's see basic, simple things. And people try to leap from a worship with form. That is Uwashu Bes. Bes means form. And remember I told you that earlier. Uwashu means worship. And they tried to go from Uwashu Bes to Uwashu Nebuchadnezzar, which means the all-encompassing, and it's abstract. Are you able to practice meditation? Are you at the level of practice meditation where you can stop your mind from thinking thoughts? If you're not at that level, then you need to have crutches, and you need to have a symbolism to focus on, you need to have a structure that will lead you to have concentration of mind. Then from there, you can lead yourself to abstract, thoughtless experience of consciousness. And that is the higher transcendental principle that is being referred to in the symbolism.
So those are just, these gods and goddesses are just symbols of.
The gods and goddesses are symbols of cosmic principles in creation. That is what they are. They are not realities in and of themselves as personalities, as you would think a personality, a god's going to come down and talk to you and be doing this in the sense of the Greek gods and goddesses.
And so they never existed, really.
They exist in a philosophical, conceptual form. However, they exist in the same terms that Krishna existed, that Buddha existed, and Asar. The exceptions are Asar. Well, beginning with the Anu theology, it is said that Ra carried the world and he came down himself personally to preside over the world. Then his son, Shu, came into existence. Shu and Tefnu came into existence. And then Gebenut came into existence. And each of them took over the rulership. And then Asar was born from Gebenut. Asar and Aset. And they were the first actual human beings, divine incarnations, who actually existed. This is what the teaching says. But I want you to be careful, because the teaching is, in order for it to be effective, it is metaphorical. If you understand it as a historical teaching, we get into trouble, the same trouble that the Christian theology is in. It is a metaphor for understanding our own consciousness. And if you want more on that, you should get the Tree of Life series, audio tape series. Okay? Well, one question.
Okay, you're saying there's one supreme being and there are lesser gods and goddesses. On the other hand, the gods and goddesses are symbolic of cosmic principles. Which one is it? Is there one God and divine principles, or there's one God and lesser gods who work, who work in God's service, in the supreme being's God's service?
Why can't we have it both ways? Why does it have to be either or? The gods and goddesses are symbols of the cosmic principles. God, and we have the supreme divinity, and those cosmic principles emanate from the supreme divinity, and they sustain creation, and they actually compose creation. Yeah. And they are personalized as gods and goddesses for our worship purposes, for us to be able to approach and understand those cosmic principles. If we understand those, then we understand the source of them.
Well, then that means there's more than one God. There's a higher God and lesser gods. There's more than one God.
How can we say that there's more than one God if those lesser gods come from the Supreme One?
Because the Supreme One created the other gods and goddesses.
Okay, let me put it to you this way. Modern physics tells us that all creation is composed of the same stuff. And all the same stuff goes back to its original essence. Can we say that anything has been created? If a wave comes out of the ocean, we can say, oh, we've created a wave. And then the wave goes back into the ocean. What has been done?
The wave manifested from that space and returned to it.
If something does not exist in the beginning, it does not exist in the end, can we say that it existed in the middle? The same thing is with the gods and goddesses. At the end of time, they recede back into the Supreme Being, and the creation dissolves. Then a new creation emerges.
We all did that, right?
Excuse me?
Everything recedes back into
Everything. Us, the world, the planets, everything recedes back to its original essence. And a new creation emerges again. The boat of Ra starts sailing again. So what I'm getting is that nothing has actually been created. See, we get to higher philosophy here. Obviously, you're asking a question. Some of you would understand what we're getting into. But from a philosophical standpoint, nothing has been created. It's an illusion, as the harpist said. If I extend my arm out, can I say that I have created something else? I created something different than myself, than my body? My hand is out here. Look, a different hand has appeared. You're going to say, oh, it's connected. You haven't created anything, it's your same hand. The gods and goddesses have extended themselves, they are connected, and they are sustained by the Supreme Being. They have no independent existence. And neither do we. Our soul is always tied to the Supreme Being. That's why we exist. And there can be no existence other than connectedness to the Supreme Being. Nothing exists outside of the Supreme Being. There's a nice tale about a sage who was a vizier for a king. And he had several people in the court who were against him. They were trying to get him kicked out. And he was away